Hey guys, welcome back to Creating Careers Podcast. On today's episode, I had a chance to sit down and talk with Colin Odle. Colin owns a video production company called The Joy Collective based in the Birmingham area. And Colin, I would say, is a very good friend of mine as well as a friend of the podcast. During a time when I was considering sort of stopping the podcast entirely, Colin sort of came in and encouraged me as well as supported me, even offered to edit episodes and reels for me. I really am appreciative of Colin's friendship, his support, and his involvement in this podcast. This conversation was way overdue, and I'm excited to share it with you today. Check it out. All right. Well, first of all, Colin Odle. I always tell people, like, whenever I introduce or whenever I talk about you, I always say the last name with a little bit of hesitation, because I always think, is it Odle, O'Dow? I don't. Anyway, I always think it in my head. I don't necessarily when I read it, it's pretty simple. But I also noticed on Facebook, you have another last name on Facebook, man. What is like, I see that occasionally with like some women that have like their married name and then their like their family name, what is the two names?
Dude, that's so funny that you even bring that up, and it shows you like how detached from like the Facebook account I am. That's why when I knew getting into this, I was like, this is gonna be dangerous waters. But I still I didn't go back and touch anything. Dude, that was literally just like me being a dork when I was 18 and I started really picking up the camera and trying to do something with it. I was fascinated by this music video director, and his name was Colin Tilley. So just playing around, because Facebook social wasn't that serious back then. So I had that last name thrown in there. I'm sure I think it even says that I went to Harvard Law School or something.
It does.
For sure. That is just strictly
Yeah.
That was trolling before trolling.
Yale. It was Yale, not Harvard. It was Yale.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, Colin Tilley. I wondered. I was like, dude, what is this Tilley? Like, does he has an alter ego he goes by or something? So I wasn't sure. So I didn't know, man. I mean, you and I have known each other for not very long, man. I feel like we built like a really cool friendship pretty quickly. But I mean, when did we first meet or talk? Do you recall?
I'm totally just gonna guess here, but it feels like a 3 months ago kind of vibe.
No, surely it's got to be more than 3 months, right?
January, March, maybe 4. Because
oh gosh, it feels so much longer than that, man.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I feel like that's just how life feels for me, though.
That's true.
Every month feels like forever.
Yeah,
just so much happens in between. But yeah, I would say that was 4 months ago, because I really didn't start, doing the production thing until the beginning of this year, and that was probably just a couple months into kind of learning the the local scene. And I just came across you on I think it was LinkedIn, and because of your LinkedIn job description,
yeah,
I knew. I was like, did you join Creators University? There was instantly a relatability factor. And then on top of it, you were in Helena, which I thought I was the only one kind of ducked off hiding in Helena. So yeah, I thought it was cool.
That was it. It was the bio in LinkedIn. And I guess we should explain to people that aren't familiar, and we'll probably get into this a little bit in your story, but Creators University, what's the guy's name that started it?
Connor Rickley.
Connor,
last name right?
Rickley?
I think so.
Okay.
Definitely
Connor, he does this basically videography company, coaching, basically. And in it, I've done some of his free um, like online courses, and in it, he basically coaches you and tells you, hey, LinkedIn is sort of like an untapped resource that a lot of people don't realize, and then he sort of tells you some strategy to utilizing LinkedIn to reach some really good potential clients. And with that, there's like a description in your it's a description in your bio on LinkedIn. And what's the actual phrase? It's like a
Video strategist.
video strategist. That's it. Yeah, yeah. And I put that on mine after watching some of the free stuff that I had gotten. You've actually joined Creators University, and which I definitely heavily considered doing at one point, but it still has been like a side company for me, or side work for me, and so I didn't go all in on it. But yeah, so both of us ended up having a really similar bio. So you can spot somebody on
100%.
LinkedIn,
I
definitely.
just knew it.
That's cool. That's cool. All right, well, let's jump into this, man. I want to know a little bit about Colin Tilley. Now, I want to know who is Colin Odle. Tell me your background, man. I know you and I have talked personally about some of this, but I'd love to hear just from the start. Where'd you grow up? What's home for you? And just we'll get into your journey into videography and stuff later. Although, feel free to go ahead and dabble into some of that too if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty vague question, so I'm gonna just throw something out there, and then you can kind of steer it how you want to steer it.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I'm from Slidell, Louisiana. Although I do now live in Helena, Alabama. Um, and I'm a father. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm just a simple like hybrid of a creative slash entrepreneur, and I really hate even like claiming that entrepreneur word because I feel like at the root of it, like I'm just a kid who at a young age really made a tough decision without realizing it of like I'm going to figure out how to do something that I will create. And it was almost kind of like arrogant in the sense of like, this started at probably 17. And I say arrogant because, in hindsight, with a little bit of wisdom I have now, you could easily, recommend a 17-year-old, to get a job and try to, save up some money during that process and then use, leverage the free time you have outside of that job and just kind of play the time game. But for me, it was just like this hunger to like chase a dream. And in that dream, it was as if like a job was not an option. And again, I will say, if anyone's younger and they're watching this, like that's not necessarily accurate whatsoever. So, with that being said, it just created a really brutal journey. But at the same time, it helped shape and mold me into uh, what I've become up to this point. So to digress, when I say like I don't like claiming that entrepreneur title, I know it's like a buzzword these days. Um, I just have played that role by no other option. So, I guess to answer the question, I'm a family man, I'm a creative, and I'm still that same audacious kid who's like really holding on to a dream, and just trying to figure it out day by day.
Tell me, did maybe I'm confusing your story with somebody else, but how far did you go through school? Did you go all the way through high school?
No.
Okay,
Um,
that's what.
is
Go
that
ahead.
what you thought I
Yeah,
went
yeah,
through?
yeah, yeah. I no, I thought I remembered you telling me that you actually ended up dropping out of school. But I know a few other people have done similar journeys. So tell me about that. At what age did you drop out? What was that decision like? And then some of that, and feel free. I mean, if some of this stuff is stuff you're not keen on
Oh, dude, I'm
really
gonna fuck.
digging into, man, you tell me to back off.
Nah, you're good, dude. Um, how old was I? So I think it would have been freshman year. Um, and what made that decision? I didn't really make the decision. So like basically I hopped into high school, and from like that moment on, I was just kind of like, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this to some degree. Um, I just was not present whatsoever. I was too I was more interested in like the story of like what was happening around this like chaotic world of independence that we like had access to. So whether that was just like, you know, observing the different groups of people at the, in the cafeteria in the mornings, and then identifying like the different groups of people that hang out at the parties afterwards on the Fridays, and just like I had so much interest in just observing the landscape of all of it, that like like what we were there to do and invest our time and energy in as far as like education. It was not even I gave it 0% effort. So finishing freshman year high school, like I technically didn't finish. I think I went into sophomore year as what our school at the time would call a freshmore, to where it's like I had freshman classes, but I had like one or two
Yeah.
sophomore classes. Um, and I wasn't a bad kid by any mean. Again, I just didn't really, my energy was just not there. My focus wasn't there. Um, I guess as I'm thinking about it in real time, like where my focus was prior to high school, my focus was, it was a mix of like social, in the sense of like I feel like I'm of like the rare era that um, watched social media as we know it like develop in real time. So dating back to like AOL Instant Messenger profiles, Zanga like pages. That was
I don't
before
even know what those are.
that was before MySpace, and then
Yeah. Sorry, I've got this
so
fly flying around in my office right now, and it's like literally attacking me throughout this whole conversation. So if you
I
see me
get
like
it.
going Mr. Miyagi on you trying to catch this fly, man, it's driving me crazy right now. And I'm like, I really want this thing out of here. But anyway, back to your story. I I think a lot of, I mean, you hear this with entrepreneurs, this idea that, you know, and I don't know that it's one of these things that people that go that route, it's, I don't know that they're always like, I'm designed for owning my own business. I think it's one of those things there, it's more of what they're not designed for.
Yeah.
And I think the educational environment in general, which I mean, I'm a former teacher, so I'm sort of part of creating this. It's not always very conducive to people that don't fit this certain box. You know what I mean? Um,
100%.
and I think that makes it really hard for people that, um, you know, uh, their primary focus isn't like I love to learn, which mine wasn't. I didn't do well in high school at all. I did much better in college, but it was because I had more of a purpose, and I learned to study through things that I really enjoyed learning whenever I got that freedom to learn what I wanted to instead of learning what I have to. And you've proven yourself as a student in so many ways since then, through video work and through learning how to run a business. I mean, you and I were talking not long ago about the idea of setting up an LLC or doing an S corp, and that's stuff that not the average high school student knows about. But so it's proof that you could learn. It wasn't that. It was that, you know, just the box that we have schools sort of established as, it's just not always very conducive to everyone's learning,
Yeah. I'd agree with
especially when we were growing up. Probably, although I'm glumping you into the 40-year-old party, and you're not 40 yet, so I apologize for that.
that. All good. And no, I mean, I would describe, if I had to guess what education looked like in my era, which I would have been like graduating class of 2011,
Okay,
maybe.
yeah,
I would assume that would fall closer or look more like your graduating class versus maybe like what right now looks like. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I was in the classroom, project learning was the norm, I think. And so even with my students, it wasn't like pull out your textbooks. We're going to read through chapter 1 today. It was hey, here's our project. Here's the goal of what we're going to be creating. Now let's figure out how to do it. And it's a lot of learning with an end in mind, not necessarily learning for the purpose of just answering a question on a test.
Yeah.
There's an actual hands-on involvement in a lot of the learning. You still have people that'll get up and lecture, but I don't think it's as much as it once was. At least from what I can tell. But anyway, we've gone way too long on this tangent. But I thought I remembered you saying that you had not completed high school. So from there, I know, and I want to get into this idea of like your journey, your creative journey, especially because I understand you started video work at one point, and then you left it for a while, and then got back into it recently. So tell me a little bit about that early experience in video. And let me go ahead and say I really like this photo I've got of you down on the bottom, where you are lifting something evidently quite heavy. And there's a few veins that are bulging there. So props on your gains, so to speak. I think your attire today does not demonstrate the muscles that exist underneath there. So
That's it.
props on that stuff.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And two of those three photos were actually taken by my cousin's wife, who's actually a dope photographer. So that's pretty cool. Uh,
Nice.
the question, what was the question again? Okay, the journey.
Yeah. Journey.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So basically, and I guess to kind of close out from what we just left to create some clarity, I didn't necessarily drop out, but I dropped out on paper. So long story short, because I literally participated zero, all of my grades were like, what is he even doing here? So what ended up happening was they have us, and it might be similar now. There's a system to where like if you get, let's say there's a rule. At the time, it was like you can't have your cell phone out when you're walking in between classes in the
Right.
hallway. And let's say if we catch you with it, you'll get a detention. And then if we catch you with it X amount of times and you max out the detentions, then it turns into Saturday detentions. And then if you do that so many times, then it turns into in-house suspension. And then if you do that, it turns in. So I basically ran through that whole system through the small, literally 99% of them were from the phone. Um, so it was just like the smallest things. And I basically maxed that system out, and it led to them saying like, okay, well, you've maxed out 3 suspensions. Now you have to go to an expulsion hearing. And when we went to the hearing, the vice principal told me, he's like, look, they're not gonna, like, you're a good kid. You don't have like fights or anything like bad on like that got you here. It's just minor stuff. So like, I doubt they're gonna expel you. But long story short, when they overviewed my grades, they were basically like, this kid's doing nothing and he's wasting space.
Mm.
So they, rather than expelling me, they gave me the option to drop out on paper, which then gave me the ability to go to what's considered a military school ran by the National Guard called YCP, Youth Challenge Program. And so I dropped out and then joined that, which was basically like living on base, doing education with a bunch of kids that were lost per se. And I had to live there for 6 months, and I got a GED through that process. Um,
Okay. Okay.
so
So now there's programs that are similar, even in this area, that basically gives an alternative route of completing your high school diploma or gathering a GED. I think most of them now offer something other than a GED, or at least try to. So that's I mean I unfortunately I don't know that military is the only route to go, or is the best route to go to give somebody an alternative form of education. But for you, was that I mean, did you see that as really helping you, not just get your GED, but like develop as a person?
Yeah. So truthfully, it did. I would have never said that like in the midst of it. You know what I'm saying? I always felt
Yeah.
like because there was a lot of kids there that were like there on court order. So I'm kind of batched in with kids that have maybe been in and out of juvenile detention, and they're getting like a break to go here on court order, kind of like as like a probation. So it's like I in my head was like, hold up, how did I get here? This isn't for me, but my mom pushed for it, and I could totally see it now that like she knew what I knew, and really what I'm gonna be saying this whole episode of like if I put my mind to something and I put the effort there, like she knew what I was capable of. So the fact that I wasn't doing it with like anything productive, or at least productive for them to kind of see, because I was doing things behind the scenes at the time in my own time that I wouldn't have even thought of as like a skill, whether it was like playing around on Photoshop or just little things here and there. But um, she, she just really pushed me to find some kind of discipline to start pouring that energy into something. So it did help, to be honest. Once I kind of just adapted to it and embraced, like, okay, I'm not getting out of here. Literally, like we, in the midst of it, like I literally like orchestrated with like a group of 5 people of like an escape plan, like at a certain time. Like literally, like as the cadres were like walking us to like dinner one night, like
It's like
boom, hit the window.
Shawshank Redemption, man.
I kid you not. We ran out. We got away for maybe an hour until they, came and found us. We were out of water. No water in our canteen. It's like, take us, dude. So eventually, I hit a point where it was like, okay, I just have to embrace this. And when I did, yeah, no, I definitely took a lot from it, and it was, I'd say, it was necessary because it was, it was like I was just lost and I needed to pour energy into something. So it was like, why not build discipline and kind of be uncomfortable in the meantime? So I'd say there was some value to it for sure.
Yeah. I worked at the alternative school in Jefferson County for a while, and kids would come in a lot of times, like a lot of really good kids that just a lot of times it was they had energy that wasn't really allowed to be released at school in productive ways, and they ended up releasing it in non-productive ways and ways that garnered the attention of administration. But a lot of times I would tell kids that, like, because you got sent here does not mean you're a bad kid, but a lot of times they felt like it was this label that was sort of put on them. Did you feel that label from your school or from this kind of program that you were a part of? And do you feel like that impacted you, basically into adulthood at all?
Um, yeah, I definitely felt the label in the sense of like, if I could paint the picture, like, what was that? 2000, I think that might have been 2010. And I'm trying to paint the picture for you to like think back to that time because, and what else was happening in 2010? Like, like maybe iPhone 2, if,
Right,
you know
right,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? Broadcast TV was still the most dominant, relevant thing. Um, and the YouTube existed, but like it really didn't. It was just like if you know, you know. Um, and it was just so different. And I'm painting this picture, I guess, to say, yeah, you take a kid who like, you know, knows. I've always had like a vision in my head of like doing something big and successful, even during that time. So to kind of feel in that window of time like, oh, everything's crumbling and now I'm in here with these people and I'm not of these people because we don't have the same issues. Really, I don't even know how I got here. um and you basically get to a point in that time where they're like, okay, now your best outcome is to get a GED.
Mm.
So this is an era when it was like, yo, first off, get your high school diploma. Second off, go to college. And like, that's how you're going to get real money. If you don't get your high school diploma, and I had adults telling me this. He was like, "You just get ready to work at McDonald's." You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's like,
Yeah.
and you believe that. So yeah, to answer the question, I definitely felt the label. I definitely felt that pressure. I think the only thing that saved me was after the fact getting out, I felt free, like somewhat independent in the sense of like my buddies were finishing up their last year of school. I was done. I had a GED. So then, I had got like a license. I got my driver's license in there. So I was able to, when I got out, my dad gave me like this little hoopty old Chevy Malibu car. So it was like, at least I had some kind of momentum. The program that I graduated from, they were paying like 200 a month just for like the next year, just cause. So like that was some gas money. So I think for me, I got a taste of that independence of, I think that's what I always wanted. It was just like, I was just ready to take on the world as ignorant as I was. And, so from right then and there, I went out and got a job and I'm starting trying to get my own money. And like, that's all I felt free. And I think the only thing that saved me was the internet, and what it's developed, like social platforms, the video world, to transition into you talking about the camera and my journey. um, I ended up fast forward a little, about a year or so after that. Now everybody's out of high school and they're going off to college and they're going to get their big degrees to try to make big money. And or I got some friends who they would just get offshore jobs, which that's a big thing. In Louisiana, you go offshore for the oil companies and whatnot. And you're always gone, and get ready to like not age well, but you'll make a lot of money fast. So you're seeing these kids like buying these $80,000 trucks, like they're and and I was just kind of just sitting there like still trying to figure it out. And so I was working at Best Buy at the time, and I was in the computer department doing sales. And honestly, like I'm thinking about this in real time. That was probably the best. Like that was probably the most impactful part of my entire story. Like as I think about this in real time, um, but I was doing computer sales department, and that job was really cool to me. I was making $10 an hour. There wasn't no commission. You know what I'm saying? This was like post Best Buy peak. Um, but I really enjoyed it. It was one of those jobs where like had a cool company culture. I like obviously I was like inside. I wasn't delivering furniture in people's houses or anything. And learning about the different technologies and stuff. As it was kind of happening was pretty cool. And it didn't take long to realize that like the whole name of that game, or like everything they want out of you in Best Buy, really was to sell warranties and to push credit card applications, truthfully. And so as I started to learn about that, um, I realized like, oh, you can get this card and like buy whatever you want on it, and then like just pay this little smaller, no financial education, no
Yeah.
understanding.
That
And
does not sound like a good mix for somebody young.
absolutely not. Well, to make it worse, at the time I was living with my like high school girlfriend at the time. Me and my parents kind of like had it out, so it was like kicked out the house. I'm working my job. I'm in my head. I'm 35 years old. Like I got it all figured out, working at Best Buy, and I was able to convince the girlfriend at the time's mom to co-sign for me to get the card. And because she had such great credit, when they approved it, it was like $10,000, 18 months interest free. So that was really the beginning of everything, because with that I remember I bought an iMac. I think that's how I got a 5D. No, yes, 5D Mark II at the time.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Nifty
that's the
50.
one that yeah, that's the one that sort of transformed the video space, because that one had such, well, I think it had the video capabilities, and sort of transformed it for a lot of people, having like a DSLR that could do high quality video.
Yeah, and for me it was a big breakthrough because I skipped what a lot of people normally kind of go through, in the sense of at the time it was like they'd start out like a Canon T3i Rebel and they would kind of rank up. I just went straight to, from like I'd never touched a camera before, like Mark II. So
Yeah.
and that was a good, that was a good setup. still to this day, like people have created dope things with that setup. So, um, yeah, with doing that, that kind of like opened up the rabbit hole of like the whole journey, in the sense of like I started obsessing over like what was happening in the market in regards to just like brands in general. I started building a brand. I was getting into web design because I wanted to make a website for my brand. So then I made my website, and I was like, I'm a web designer because I just made the website. So I'm like, now pay me, I'll make you a website. Um, Same thing with the video. Um, and it's literally a blur. So I'm like trying to live it all in real time. But in a nutshell, like that was it. I leveraged that moment, created that business at the time, which was like me getting on social media and just like, ironically enough, pretty adjacent to what I do these days. Just getting on social media and just kind of like spamming people for like opportunity, kind of like cold outreach, without
Yeah.
even realizing that was a term. So I started out doing websites for people. The website thing was the first thing. I figured out WordPress, how to design websites and whatnot, and then eventually like had some small local mom and pop businesses paying me. Like I remember, like I could get like $500 websites, and the moment that I actually did that one time, it like lit a fire, because it was like, oh, I could really do this. And in parallel to what I was making, at my day job, I was like, dude, if I could just do this a few more times. So I basically just stayed on that hunt until the moment that, the moment, and I wasn't smart about it. I wasn't like, oh, let me see if I can average it out. It was just like the moment that I get close to what I make here with this, I quit. And that's literally what I did. So I was doing websites first, and the video thing. I That whole time in high school when I gave no energy to nothing, what I did kind of like obsess heavily with was just like hip hop music. And at that time, I was just so fascinated with the music videos, the storytelling aspect of it. I would run home at to be home for like 4:30 to catch like BT 106th and Park, like music video countdowns. So around the same time when I had the camera, I remember there was a director named Tree J TV, and he was shooting all of the content for Mac Miller. And this was when Mac Miller like hadn't blown yet, but he was like bubbling like in real time. And man, I'll just never forget it. I remember watching it on the iMac and seeing his little logo at the end and thinking to myself, I don't know why, but I just had the audacity to believe like it was simple. Like I could do that. And then that just kind of transitioned into me just like, okay, well, I'm watching how like what in my eyes the best are doing. So then I would just kind of go back to my world and then find like local rappers and be like, hey, can I shoot yours for free? And they're like, of course. And in my head, they're like, they have the audacity to be like presenting themselves as an artist. So to me, they're like the biggest thing ever. But in reality, like these are just people that like they're just trying the same way that I'm just trying. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, um, I don't know how deep you want me to go in this, but
Yeah.
like in a nutshell, that led to that process. That's what it was. It was like I'm learning these two skills, websites, videos, and I'm just going to keep doing it for people that give me a chance until my whole theory was like, I don't care if I how much free stuff I do. At some point, you're gonna go to my website, and I'll have so much work that like I have to look legit. Someone's gonna want to pay me money. And in reality, what it gave me, it allowed me the opportunity to build enough repetition to get decent with what I was doing. Even though I was trash at the time, let me be clear, I was still like building that skill set. And essentially, through enough reps of that, one of the people that I um, essentially cold outreached off of Twitter in 2013 or 2012 um, was what is now a famous artist, was just a local artist who was just like nobody on the come up, and that was Kevin Gates. It was his wife, and she paid me all from a cold outreach. She paid me $1,000 to make two websites, and I remember I was so lit, like first time triple digits. It's like it was as big as it could get, and then that established the relationship. And once I established the relationship, they were kind of, she was pretty cool. And, they started, I was also a fan of the music locally. And he, basically just through the communication and establishing of the relationship, they started inviting me to his local shows. That he was probably, this was so early. He was probably getting like $2,000 to perform at these like dangerous nightclubs. And so I would just go and be there, like just standing on like backstage. Like, this is so cool. I'm doing nothing. And then eventually I just offered like, hey, I could just like film all of this. And yeah, they were like, of course. And at the time, I kind of skipped over this detail, but at the time, I kind of hopped back into school, like trying to, and I was in a community college for business administration, probably for about 6 months, um, until Kevin eventually ended up like, it wasn't about 4 months after I was like, hey, I'll film this, that he ends up getting a record deal, and like his schedules just started picking up, and then anywhere he went, I went, and then if I went there, I had a camera, and the rest was really history from there.
That that scene, I mean, I've seen a couple of other people that have either been in that scene for a period of time, like just musicians and sort of touring with them. Or, I mean, I know there's one guy that I hope to have on an episode soon that's currently doing a lot of that. Um, how is that scene as far as like, is the work like fun? Is it enjoyable? Is it backbreaking? Is it crazy hours? Is it financially as beneficial as a lot of people sort of envision that stuff being?
Um, it's fun. It's crazy hours. It's backbreaking. Financially, I mean, I can only speak for myself,
Right.
but financially for me, it was like absolutely not there. But I blame a lot of that to me, just honestly to my just lack of understanding business and running a business. I thought because no one was telling me what to do that like I was a business owner. But in reality, it was like I have a camera, I'll trade a service, and that was it. How do I evaluate my market value? How do I go about pricing? Like none of that. I was an 18-year-old dropout running around with somebody who's blowing up in front of my eyes. And because he started to gain popularity, me being connected to him started to gain popularity. So now, while he's rising, all of the upcoming artists that wanted to, they would want to come, they would reach out to me for me to do their work just because of my connection to him. So, and I'm still just as ignorant. So I'm like, I went from instead of doing it free for him, I'm telling these guys like $500, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, sick. And then it's like another one, another one, another. So it's like I was playing this like low price, high volume game. Um, when you think cinematography and production, especially like your platform and the guys that you bring on here, like there was no production crew. It's like me, a camera, maybe like a LED light on top, and show up in the trenches, like literally 9 times out of 10, and it's just like go. Y'all perform. You better come up with a dope. Do your best on site to kind of come up with a good performance, what I'd call like a master shot, and then after that, you better just go hunt for some B-roll. Um, but you got to think, dude, 18, 19 years old, like a hip hop nerd running around with like, because I'm flying to Cali with them. I'm in Atlantic Records. I'm like sharing elevators with like Flo Rida and people that are even more bigger. So it's like, I didn't care. I kept telling myself this story that like the money will come. I'm just going to keep doing this thing. The money has to come. Um, and it didn't necessarily play out like that. I mean, me personally, like I was on salary for Kevin, which was, if you weigh out the pay to like the hours, it's insane because I was living with him. So it was like I
Yeah.
worked for you 24/7, always 365, and but again, you know, I was like, it's either this or go back home and work at Best Buy. And I may not know what I'm doing, but there's something here.
Yeah. Well, and I know just based on our talks that you ended up leaving that line of work and you ended up creating some pretty successful businesses since then. And I would like to go ahead and sort of fast forward a little bit, but I also want to respect that those years. But I do want to talk about the Joy Collective and sort of what that is. But as much as you want to sort of cover that in between years, after you left sort of the hip hop scene, and then just however you'd like to, I'd like for you to land on the Joy Collective and sort of tell us how that got started.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, fast forward, 5, 6 years in that music scene. I think 4 of those years running around with Kevin. Eventually, I started to get a little older, started to kind of build a little bit of business IQ. Still clueless, but enough to know like I need to build a brand. I need to build something beyond like the guy attached to this one artist. So that kind of like gave me the courage to essentially like separate from what I was doing to then go work with other artists, which I did. And then eventually, I I think really how the story goes is like I hate to say it, but truthfully, eventually I really gave up, because as cool as it was, what was tough was watching the years of life that I gave away in the sense of, like I had family I hadn't seen in years, like my little sister's growing up, kids I went to school with. It's intimidating because like they are buying their first home, they're getting married. Some people are so it just got to a point where after so many years that I'm like, what am I doing? But the truth was, in hindsight, I could see the value now was I was building a skill. That's what I was doing. Um, but at that time, I wanted more. I wanted it short term, and I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to figure it out fast. So eventually, I just gave up. Kind of went back to like I'm just going to do the normal job life thing because like the money that I'm making doing this isn't adding up. Did that for like a year. In that year, met my current wife, uh, current family. Now I got a little kid with me, and having a child to raise in the process that changed everything. So I was like in this limbo of trying to be normal, trying to be there for this family, um, but in my gut feeling convicted like this is not the life for me. Um, so uh, did that for about a year and was like, nah, I can't do it anymore. And then I really just hit the ground running, like obsessively on YouTube and stuff of like just anything business, Again, me coming from like a hip hop background, when the only thing I knew about business was like Master P. He would talk about business a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was just getting like his chip company set up, and he was preaching product outweighs talent, and so I just started rabbit holing any and everywhere I could to just try to figure anything out, and that kind of put a that kind of put fire under me to go, okay, I need to try something different. And I need to get product and I need to create a business and I need to create an asset, these buzzwords that I'm kind of like learning. And this was like COVID. Like COVID hits, the world slows down, and I'm still like, which wasn't that long ago. And I'm
Right.
like, I'm still trying to figure my life out. I'm getting close to 30 at the time. Everybody else is seeming like they got it together. And this is why relationships are so important. Once I started to gain that knowledge about business, um, I knew somebody in the who I knew someone local who owned a chain of vape shops, like the nicotine vape shops. I don't promote this to anybody, but um, he and I knew that because when I was being a degenerate in high school, I was smoking cigarettes, and then I eventually used the vape to get off the cigarettes, and then eventually quit it all together. But in that process, I met the old man that had these chain of vape shops, and then eventually one of my closest friends started to go work for him, and then eventually he ended up in a ownership partnership position. So I became really like tight, kind of like elbows with this situation over there, as I'm over here kind of like obsessing over business, and I'm seeing what they got going on, and I kind of know the market space because I was a consumer. So I felt like I could identify problems in the marketplace that nobody was filling. And long story short, I was like, okay, there's something here. The problem was I needed money. So again, relationship situation, a real blessing from God. One of the relationships that I met, a really close friend of mine that was a part of the whole music video journey with me. He was part of, Kevin Gates, um, I guess, team per se. I reached out to him basically saying like, "Hey, this is everything I know about this person's business. This is kind of what I'm thinking. I want to do my own, and I want to do it over here, and this is what I want to do different. And all I would need is like this much money. And if you wanted to like give me that money, we could be like partners, and then I'll just do everything from there." And it's, I mean, I look back to this day and I'm like, it's so crazy that such a good friend. I'm so grateful and like forever indebted that he like believed in me, because I feel like if I'd have came to me now, I'd be like, "What? Why? No." You know what I'm saying?
You
Um,
would turn yourself down.
I would turn myself down for sure. So anyway, my friend took a chance. He loaned me the capital to start that first shop. I hit the ground running. I got obsessed with it. I moved my entire family into my mom's house, so that way I had like no overhead. That way that I could work at the shop 7 days a week, and I didn't have to worry about paying myself. So I just took all the risk out of the situation and just hit the ground running. And fast forward, it was history. The shop did extremely well. It did good enough for me to build a foundation for myself financially. Eventually, I was able to scale and buy my time back out of it. And I guess fast forward out of that, I don't want to get too lost in the details of the in between, but buying my time out of that, setting myself up with like a financial base to just kind of be like comfortable. I'm not rich or balling out by any means, but bills are paid, and my time is now in front of me. So it's like, what next? And I knew, even though I did a great job and I had good intentions with that store, I knew like I didn't want to be the guy who just was going to continue to scale a bunch of vape shops. And the older I got, the wiser I started to get, the more I started feeling a little convicted on like what I was doing. There was no passion. I was passionate about the business. I wasn't passionate about the product. You start wanting to kind of, you get to a point where it's working, but like, what kind of impact are you bringing? And it's like, again, it was just this moment of like, I think I could do even more. Um, and that's really what led to the picking the camera back up. What really led to picking the camera back up was having that time in front of me, and then going like, okay, now I need to figure it out all over again. And it started with my wife. She's an artist. She paints. So she started painting, and I kind of forced myself in her situation and was like, hey, you should make like a brand around painting and you as an artist. And in the midst of that, like, you should pump out like 3 to 4 pieces of content every week, and like, and then you should like get into YouTube, and then we'll like leverage the short form pieces for social, and then we'll build this big thing. And it was really just me like kind of putting all this on her, and we did, and we started, and that I was doing all of that for her. She never really had interest in doing it. She was just like, okay. And that kind of brushed off my skills. Um, and that kind of got the bug relit to doing the camera and everything, the muscle memory. And then eventually she got burnt out and was like, I don't want this isn't for me. This is not, I just want to paint, you know? So I was, and honestly, that was like, that hurt because I was getting so invested into what we were creating for her, or for myself, or however you want to label it. But either way, I was just having so much fun, and just having like an impact and a goal in front of me, and it was just something different. So that kind of left me stuck and confused again. And from there, eventually, I was like, okay, I'm having fun with this. Clearly, there's something to it. let me leverage the skill that I've developed over all these years. Let me merge it with the business knowledge that I've accumulated over the past few years. Let me kind of sandwich it together and create a business, a production company. And yeah, that was the true start of the Joy Collective. In doing that, I didn't know what I was doing. Uh, Again, if it, I knew I may have knew how to work that camera to a degree, but the one thing I continue to fail at was making money with that camera. So that's the Joy Collective started. That's where Creators University came in. I invested into that. That's where I educated myself and learning, um, you know, essentially a business model and how to acquire customers and systems and processes around production companies from other people who have already done it. And then once I was given like the clarity around that, then I hit the ground running with Joy Collective. And I'm in that in real time right now.
It was funny. I think when you and I first started talking, um, you had just bought the R5, right? Um,
Our
I think
six.
the R6, yeah. So whenever we first started talking, you had just bought the R6, and it was funny because you told me you had been out of the video scene for a few years, and you went ahead and got you saw this new Canon camera. This must be great. And then you got the lenses that you were familiar with, which were all EF lenses. And then you're like,
Right.
wait a minute,
They don't
this Canon lens won't fit this Canon camera because you didn't know anything about the RF glass. So
literally. And then when I found that out, I was so upset because I was like, man, I had this one moment to get the nice stuff and I bought the wrong stuff.
that was
And
funny.
I'm
That
still
was
shooting with EF glasses to this day on an adapter.
Hey man, those adapters are great though. I mean, Canon's
Yeah.
done it right. Do you have any of them that have the drop-in NDs in the adapter?
No, I'm
Okay.
operating the C70 has internal ND, and then
Oh,
I've got
okay. Yeah.
external like ring for the R6.
Yeah, I think some of those adapters have it where you can drop in like different filters, and some of those are ND filters that you can put in there. There may even be one that has like a little dial on it that you can turn. That's a variable ND that can be on the back side of the lens. Which I mean, again, then it's almost like internal NDs, but it can also be on your R6 just in case you want to look into that. But I thought, man, it's a great story because of the fact that your experience, you know, in the video scene early on, gave you a lot of the skills, but then it was like, man, you had to catch up on, I'm assuming like 5 or 6 years of technology, which that was like the prime time for growth in the camera market, especially going mirrorless.
Literally, I didn't know what mirrorless meant. I just saw it was new and more expensive than the DSLR, so I just bought it, and kind of just started to figure it out after. To be honest, I'm still like figuring all of that out from that gap. Like
I believe it.
autofocus blew my mind. Like that whole era we just kind of talked about, that was all manual focus. And it's like I'm in clubs at that time, like low light at 1.2 on a 50 millimeter prime, like just
Yeah.
like doing everything I can, and then um, yeah, and then now like the autofocus is insane. Now I can't even use manual focus because I'm like, what is this? Everyone stop! Something's not working here.
All right, so I want to hear your explanation for the name, the Joy Collective, because I think if I remember it correctly, it's a really cool understanding of sort of your idea behind it.
Yeah, wasn't really too much to it outside of like my mother's name is Joy, so I wanted again the underlying whole like theme of me even getting into this was kind of like you know when we came to Alabama and I put my daughter into Helena Elementary, they had a career day and she asked me to come, and it dawned on me like in that moment, like I can't do that. I can't tell you like, yeah, I sell nicotine, and, So it was just like that kind of like that woke me up to a degree. So the underlying theme of me getting into Joy Collective was like, okay, let me try to let me invest my time and pour into something that is like more impactful, a little more righteous, just like all around like let's just switch it up all the way. And yeah, in the process of that, you come to a point you got to name it. And my mother's name was Joy, is Joy. And so I just named it after her. I threw the collective in there because I knew I knew I was about to go gung ho with this thing and eventually like build a team. So the Joy Collective, that's just where it came from. And the thing with my mom is like there's just been this underlying obsession since like 18, and I think it also roots from the hip hop world. It's such a common like dream of like wanting to create enough success to retire her. So like that was just kind of like an emblem of like a reminder. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's cool. I love it. I mean, the Joy Collective in general is just a great name, and then the fact that it's got that kind of meaning behind it is really cool. And let me say this because I really owe you some gratitude, man. Because when you and I sort of kicked off our friendship, I was just getting started a little bit into doing the podcast. I think I had done a couple of episodes and maybe I was like re releasing them at the time. And you came on and just encouraged me so much. And I've talked about this with a couple of people, but you were one of those that when I really was considering like stopping this entirely, you were like, dude, don't stop it. I think you expressed sort of how much you enjoyed it and even benefited from just being exposed to these people because you were sort of new to the area or new getting back into the creative sort of I guess industry in general. And you even at one point said, "Dude, I'll do the editing. You send it to me. I'll edit it for you." I've never resorted to sort of like forcing you to stay true to your word on that. But man, just the fact that you were willing to offer that, I really am grateful, man. I mean, your friendship, but your support in that friendship and encouragement means a lot to me.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, thank you. That's very kind for sure. But I didn't feel like I was doing this like hard task. It was like you said, it was genuinely. I know what it's like to be in something and not really like see it for what it's worth, right? And I think all of us in this creative space have some form of imposter syndrome to a degree. And I know even more specifically with the podcast world, that's a tough one because you're looking at these metrics and it's like 4 views, 13
Yeah,
views.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
can imagine how easy it is to be like, man, what am I wasting all of this time? Um, but like everything else, I know when I'm like outside looking in someone else's situation, I can see the more the positive things to see versus if it was my own. And with the podcast, um, obviously I am a podcast consumer, and I don't, the world is at this point, but I started watching podcasts early, before COVID, before it was like a popular thing. Um, and I say that to paint the picture that like sometimes you'll see local guys start a podcast, like a podcast startup, and like it feels like that. You know what I'm saying? So if
yeah,
you're a podcast consumer and like it's real easy to get snobby of like, because at the end of the day, you only got so much time. So if it just doesn't feel um whether it's the production or the storyline or the preparation or whatever it is that's creating that feeling, a lot of times you'll see these local podcast startups just feel like exactly what they are. They're just, they're on their come up, which is, that you have to go through that. So I'm not like trying to discourage anybody. I'm just painting the picture that for me, I never felt that with yours. With your podcast, I like clicked in as a consumer instantly. And because I was so new to the area, all of it was new. All the characters coming in, like, so like the story that was happening in real time for me was a brand new story. And, your preparation to it, the production to it, um, it just felt good. And it was literally solving problems for me in real time because at the same time of me stumbling on your pod, I'm also like launching Joy Collective in like real time. So within that, I'm like, okay, I need to network, build as many relationships. I also got to get good at the camera thing again because like I never was like the greatest, you know, whether it be director or director of photography or a gaffer, like whatever. Like I was never the greatest of any of those. Um, I was just a um, Swiss Army knife per se, and I could do just enough on all fronts. So in this very critical time of trying to like knowing I have to like sharpen all of these areas, your pod was super dope because I started meeting new people through it like in real time. You brought on Aaron. I don't want to butcher his last name.
Will Height.
You brought on Aaron Wilhite first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then that kind of opened up my eyes to him, which showed me like, oh, there's like a local guy I could like rent some stuff from too. And then through renting from him, at one point there was something that I was trying to find he didn't have, and then he linked me up with Kevin with Cedar Creative, which you
Yeah.
also brought on. So by the time he references Kevin, I'm already knowing who they are because I'm watching your podcast and I'm just like mind blown by all these characters and looking at the work, the whole nine. And um, the diversity of the characters you're bringing in, whether it be people like, I look at Aaron and I feel like I relate to Aaron the most out of everybody because I look at him and I see again another Swiss Army knife, like a hybrid creative slash business person that like is just kind of understands the scope of things, and he's kind of navigating in that unique lane with that perspective, versus you had a John Champion who's like this production beast of a machine, and it's just like he was just like I only show up on these crazy awesome sets to do this crazy, which that's just a space I never really graduated to I never graduated to a space to be able to like experience that, again, just wearing all of the hats. Um, but through the podcast and through seeing like John Champions and the Cedar Creative crew, and there's so many of them, so unfortunately I'm going to leave somebody out, but,
That's all
um,
right.
or even, or even like this, what's his name? Oh, um,
Is he the
friends with
director?
Aaron
Oh, Harrison
Travel.
Tarabella.
Seeing Harrison, someone like who's kind of
Yeah.
seems to be outside looking in, polar opposite of Aaron, but just like super creative, leaning on that side. Um, coming and finding Dustin, and then seeing like his color grading. So it's like I'm like learning these characters in real time, and the irony is, I was also in the moment of like upgrading cameras. So I was weighing out, with the budget I had, do I go C70? Do I go red? Whichever the red, I think it was the Komodo, the one that doesn't have autofocus, whatever one's in like the price line of the C70. And YouTube started feeding me videos of local Birmingham people doing comparisons of the red. It was actually um, Aaron and Harrison, I
Harrison.
believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot was happening, and it was kind of all like rooting back to your podcast. Like your podcast was like the hub of all the people that I just kept like, the universe or God like was just putting in front of my face. And I'm grateful for it because again, I found these people. I've gained value from these people. I've picked all of these guys' brains that I've had the chance to like, whether it be a text message or, in person or if I haven't even met them, just hearing their stories and watching, the work they do, looking at their website, trying to figure out, I'm learning in real time. I genuinely am. So the diversity of your pod has been super dope too. Again, how you brought in like a John Champion who's more on the light production side, and then realizing like, oh, I should probably invest more thought and time and energy into that aspect of it versus just this aspect of it. So yeah, that's the reason why I was just like, no, don't quit. Like if you can provide this kind of real time value for me and solve problems for me, I'm sure my business brain says that's product market fit. So there's more of me out there. You just have to keep going.
Yeah. Well, it's been really good. I mean, ever since that moment, and you pushed me. I mean, I think I was already committed to interview Billy Ivy, and I think I even told you I was like, I think this is going to be the last one. And man, like since then, which Billy was great. All of them have been great. I actually just talked to Aaron Wilhite. I think it was this morning, just via just DMing back and forth a little bit. And I was like, man, I gotta get him back on. But he was the original, man. He was the first one
Set it
that
off.
said yes to it. And man, it's really it's been so much more than I could have ever imagined. Just the response to it, you know. I mean, I'm not making money off this thing by any means, and I don't know that I ever will, or even that it matters that I if I do or not. But just the connections, the encouragement, the support, the views, all of that has been really incredible. And again, thank you for just your timely encouragement and your friendship, man. Because you heard a lot. I think around that same time we were. Was that the time we did the work for Cedar or for Seed Creative? We did that long. I think it was like a 4 hour drive we did that day, and it was a lot of time in the car. But man, it was great to just sort of have somebody to just be a sounding board, man. Just somebody to listen to me and then share back some really encouraging stuff. So again, I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I want to look at the Joy Collective a little bit. I want to talk about the work that you do. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the actual website. Man, I love the logo. I mean, it's relatively simple in the sense of a camera with the lens being the O, but at the same time, man, it's just a cool visual. I think it Joy is very friendly and approachable. The logo looks very friendly and approachable, but at the same time, it communicates pretty well what you do. But let's talk a little bit about the work that you do. If you want to talk about some of your main clients, maybe even if you want to talk about what a video strategist really is, or any of that kind of stuff. Tell us what you do, man.
Yeah. So to be honest, a video strategist, in my opinion, is really just a fancy word for saying like, hey, I can provide, cinematography solutions, videography, whichever word you want to use. I can create a video for you, but I'm going to go into it with the mindset and approach of, but before I try to sell you anything, let me hop on a conversation with you and ask as many questions as possible so that I can kind of learn, um, you know, whether you had a video in mind or you didn't. If you do, why that video? What's the purpose to it? What are you thinking? What's making you lean there? How's your business model work? What are all your different customer acquisition funnels that currently exist? Which ones are kind of like working? Which ones aren't? And just kind of like digging through the layers of the business on their end, um, and just really taking that data and leveraging it to find a solution that would be the highest, that would yield the highest return on their time and investment. And then me figuring out, okay, am I qualified to create that solution for them? Okay, and then let's do that. Versus, me just saying like, hey, I can show up and record things. You just point and tell me what to do.
Right, right. I think a lot of companies. I was actually telling somebody earlier today, because at work, which I don't do it for, I don't the work with the school system at least. That I'm For those that don't know, I'm a videographer, photographer for Shelby County Schools. But anyway, we were sort of having a department meeting where this department wants a video. And I was telling them, not everyone that wants a video, or not every project that people think they want a video for, actually needs a video. And I think that's something that is really necessary when businesses come to you, or anybody comes to you and says, man, we need a video. Do you really need a video? Or even like, you think you need a video to show this product, or hey, we want a video that's going to showcase this new location or this new whatever. Not always do you need that video, or not always do you need a video at all. And so I think having somebody that can sort of navigate those decisions, or make sure that the video is going to be as effective as possible is huge. And I've definitely been guilty of creating videos just to create one, and there goes my thumbs up. So, but that's cool. Tell me this. I want to know, because I know Alabama Farm Credit, at least in my talking to you, has become a pretty big client for you. Tell us a little bit about what you do for them, and this shot is I love. I love this photo right here specifically, or a still from the video is really cool. But also, I mean, so many of these shots from your website are through them. Tell us a little bit about that client and what it is you do for them, assuming you can tell us that stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean it's pretty simple. Alabama Farm Credit, they're not a bank. It's kind of complex on me describing it, but they're not a bank. But in a way, essentially they they're a group of agriculture owners that come together as like a board that almost acts as a bank but isn't a bank. And there's like, I guess there's different rules to it. There's certain members on the board, and but anyway, in a nutshell, they have what we're doing together is creating client testimonial videos where we're basically taking their members, um, whether this person started a nonprofit on a land of agriculture and Alabama Farm Credit helped them get that piece of agriculture or help fund the machinery that they needed to, or if it's like in that case, a cattle farm and they're getting all their assistance and uh, Alabama, they're partnering up with Alabama Farm Credit to really make this all happen. And we're just kind of coming in and highlighting the member and their story. And then at the end of it, we're really just strategically tying back the relevance of the relationship between that character, their story as we share it, and their relationship with Farm Credit. So I think in a simple description, it would, you'd call it like a client testimonial, but there's a bit of strategy there where we focus less on like pushing Alabama Farm Credit in the company and more of just trying to like find these people's story and like really share it and make you kind of like learn them as characters and kind of invest into them. And then, somewhere throughout the end, you'll kind of organically find out, the the relevance and perspective of Alabama Farm Credit to them. That makes sense.
I think it's genius, man. I mean, you think about Nike, for instance, and I think I heard this or something similar to this the other day. If you look on Nike's ads or their social media, I mean, they're not just simply showing you their clothing. They're not just simply showing you their shoes. Um, they're showing you the emotion and the experience that sort of goes with those things. Um, it's making you feel something. You know what I mean? And that's what I see this as. It's like they're not talking about their interest rates. They're not talking about their different payment plans. They don't talk about their services necessarily. They're talking about the emotions, the opportunities, the feelings that their partnerships with their clients create, and that's cool. And dude, the visuals of this is incredible. I mean, how many people, especially growing up in Alabama, how many people just drive through? I mean, we just got back from the beach. You drive through central Alabama and you see so much of this farmland, and it's just beautiful, man. And animals on it are incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's really a great client to have for you, and I think you are doing some really great work with it. Um, Go ahead. You were about to say something.
No, I was just gonna say thanks. And like honestly, every shot that you're highlighting, like, oh, this shot is amazing, like that's all Josh. Like Josh is a director of photography. That essentially is like become like, my go-to like in-house, really like in the trenches with me right now, like as we're kind of curating and trying to scale this team. And so I definitely didn't want to like not mention that because you just keep throwing these compliments and I'm like, dude, that's Josh's shot. That's Josh's shot, so
Well, I'll get to Josh in a little while. We'll definitely be talking about him. I want to talk about this place, man. You did this video for this lady, or for this was one of. I'm assuming this was one of the clients for the Alabama Credit
Yep.
or Farm Credit. How's it go?
Alabama Farm Credit.
There you go, Alabama Farm Credit, and I understand she has a farm that is for basically special needs students that have aged out of like school programs, and so she has a program there on their farm, on her farm, where where I guess adults with special needs can learn life skills still. So it's like a continuation of their education. Dude, this story literally brought a tear to my eye. It was
Oh, bro.
incredible, man.
Thank you, dude. Thank you. Yeah, dude. And you know what? That was a tough one, or at least mentally going into it, because when we did the interview with her, I knew going into it she was going to do well on camera. And the reason I knew that is because she had, I dug up, when I was in like the pre-production stage, I dug up a video that she had kind of done prior, maybe like in her own time, on her own dime. Um, and just seeing how she spoke on camera, I knew like, okay, she can communicate very well. And then going into it, that, the day of the shoot and starting the interview, she, you could tell like she was, although we asked a lot of questions, and Lexi with Alabama Farm Credit, she plays a heavy role in like curating the questions for me. um and even though we asked, she shows genuine interest, and she kind of asks genuine questions on the spot, and we kind of extract as much information as possible. But it was like, you ask one question, and then boom, 25 minutes she's just going off like, here's my story, and which is a good, it's a good thing. um but from like a post production standpoint, by the time we finished the interview, it was an hour and 10 minutes. It
Yeah,
was an hour and 10 minute interview, and I'm knowing like, okay, I have to curate a story, an impactful one at that, um, and take an hour and 10 minutes of audio and crush that thing down to 3 minutes tops. So going into post production, I was like, I don't want to say stressing, but it was intimidating. It was intimidating for sure. And the irony of it is, it didn't. It was probably one of my fastest curated, I guess, stories of audio. Because you got to obviously condense all that, find the, and just put the whole story together. And I went into it just like fearful, like, man, we gathered so much info, but it was beautiful. I basically, I love that she gave us so much, because what I did was I exported a transcript from Premiere of her audio, and then I threw it up on this big TV that's right on top of my monitor, and I just kind of like gazed through the words, and kind of, and then I looked for, through the words, I looked for like who, what, why, and how. And obviously farm credit, that's the how, and I take those four pillars: who, what, why, and how, and I'm dividing that by the length of the audio track. So if the audio track's 3 minutes, that means the video is gonna be 3 minutes. I got to cover these four pillars to tell the story properly. How much of what do I put in here? I've got an hour, so I divide, four into 3 minutes. Tells me roughly like, okay, I can afford to have this much who, this much, you get what I'm saying? And
yeah.
and then
It's a
from there,
math equation in video editing.
for sure. But I will say, like, doing that, it gave me enough clarity going into it to where I was, all I had to do was kind of gaze through um, the transcript, pull what I needed out of it, and then it timestamps it for you so that I could just jump back to it and put it all together.
Yeah. The have you ever tried editing with the script? Have you ever done that in Premiere Pro where you can literally look at the transcript and then select words and delete it, and it
Yep.
deletes that from the video?
Yeah, I do that time to time.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing, and you can literally like search for words, and then all those words can be highlighted, and you can either delete them or you can copy and paste them onto something else. I can imagine certain type of editing, man. That feature alone makes it amazingly fast versus the way people used to have to search and figure out, where was this said. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
But look,
Speaking of,
I want
oh,
to
go
say this
ahead.
before you segue off of that, just to kind of again tie in like the impact of the podcast.
Yeah.
That video you're referring to, it, I finished it, and the first thing I always do is I'll share it with like close friends and people whose like opinions, they matter to me, because I want to create the best thing I can. And the obvious thing that I kept noticing was everyone's reaction to the story. The story was great. Tear, 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 tear. So I was like, okay, story's everything. So it's great that we executed that. But because of the relationship that I've built with Kevin with Cedar through you and the podcast, he's basically, he didn't choose to, but he's now on the list of like people I would share a project with and be like, hey, poke holes in it, as you fit. And it's such a great dynamic, because while it's a great story and whatnot, like he didn't hesitate to be like, hey, at the end there's this very very impactful moment, and the audio is just kind of doing the same thing. So I think there's opportunity for the audio to kind of like open up and close, and to like add even more impact. Um, and it really like it's. I would have never thought it. I would have just been like, oh, everyone loves the story. This thing's good to go. Why do any more work? And so literally, I'm still tweaking that final project, trying to like take the seed that he planted and like really make that final, you know, 15 seconds like the most impactful that it could be.
I think it's cool, man. I mean, you you bring a fresh perspective to the video industry, in my mind, at least, just through our conversations. Um, because of the fact that you are so willing to reach out to people and get their input on things. I mean, you've asked me on multiple occasions, just sharing stuff, and sometimes I don't give very friendly feedback. So, but like you take that, and here's
Yeah.
another example of you taking that and being like, that, like I can take that and I can improve on this project. That's really cool, and I think that says a lot about you being able to take that kind of criticism and wanting it. But it also says something about the creatives in this area that are willing to give you that kind of feedback. It's not like I've heard the term gatekeeper recently. This idea that people in like movie industry or in the YouTube space, if they're like, I know how to do this, but I don't want to share it with people. But it doesn't seem like, more and more it seems like people are like, hey, I'm willing to share my tips and tricks and things that I've learned along the way, and that's cool. That's cool, and I think you highlight the fact that we do have so much of that in this community.
Yeah, a lot, dude. I've never seen, all my years of like the music video industry and kind of bouncing around the Louisiana market, Atlanta, Cali. I've never seen anything like the Birmingham, like creative space. Everyone's so friendly and like collaborative, and it's super cool, honestly.
I agree. I agree. It's one reason that this podcast is as easy to put on as it is, because so many people are quick to say yes to doing things. So that's cool. All right, now we do have to address something quite fluffy. Okay, like, what is this, man? Tell me about this, because at the same time, I'm trying to think. I should have that text, man, where you sent me this. Let me find that, because I was going through all of our texts. I was actually looking for some incriminating photos, if you had possibly shared any with me. Unfortunately, you have not. So, but let me see if I can pull up. I want this video. Oh gosh, is that playing through your system? The audio? No. Okay. Gosh, I may not have. Do you have this video up on your Instagram?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's on Joy Collectives.
Let me pull that up. Man, this was. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna have the audio on this, but I will. I'll pull up the visuals. Man, this was such. This was probably the first thing I really saw from you. Maybe this was definitely early in our communication. Um,
Yeah,
so
that was the
so
first
tell us.
project I ever shot with the C70.
Okay. All right. So tell us about this project. Tell us about this fluffy beast, and yeah, just share a little bit.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, like that is my dog, our pet dog. His name's Shiloh. He's a toy poodle. Um, and I never had pets growing up my whole life. I'm actually allergic to dogs, but like because he's hypoallergenic or whatever, it is so funny to see that. um, even my little daughter, she's 8, and she had been asking for a pet for so long, as they all do, and then eventually we budged, we got him, and he has literally become like a character to our family. It's quite hilarious, and what this was two things. One, that company right there is actually like local Birmingham, Alabama. And again, that was, and I know that because I like did a cold outreach to the guy who owns it. And he was super cool. And he got back with me and he was like, he appreciated the hustle of a cold outreach. So, we spoke, I got his contact relationship and whatnot. But at the same time that I kind of like gained his contact and kind of peeked into his business, I had just got this dog and also just got the C70. So that was literally just us on a rainy Sunday, like just out of nowhere, no planning, like just off the cuff. Me, my wife, and my daughter, like literally, like they helped, like direct, like all of it, literally. That was just us as a collective on a Sunday. I ordered his product like a couple days before that on Amazon, and on a rainy Sunday we just put that together. I just Me and my wife kind of spitballed like a script. I remember we were on the way home from Louisiana one weekend, and we were thinking about it. Like I knew I wanted it to be like short form, entertaining, funny, something that if you saw on TikTok, like the average mom would find appealing, shareable. That was the goal I was going for, shareable. Um, so me and my wife kind of worked collectively on like the script, and I kind of just threw it in AI. It kind of cleaned it up, and then I copy and pasted that into an AI voiceover generator. It gave me like so many different voice options, and I knew I wanted it to be like trolling in a way. So it's he it gave Shiloh like the British like uppity snobby British kind of accent, and yeah, it gave me the voiceover. I laid it on there, and then from there it was just a matter of getting the shots, and that's at my house. We go to Target down the road. We got the shots in Target. That's in my kitchen. We literally just did that on the fly, on the cuff. A fun spec ad slash like trying to figure out how the C70 works because it was brand new. So
Well,
it was
there's
fun.
so much about this project that I love. The voiceover. Unfortunately, if you're watching this podcast, you're not getting to hear this right now. I encourage you to stop watching the podcast and go watch this video because the audio on it really is great, and the fact that that was AI generated voiceover, it's incredible. It doesn't sound robotic at all. It sounds, I mean, I think because it's sort of a goofy accent to some degree and it's meant to be sort of comedic, I think it works even better than had it been like a serious dialogue or voiceover. But
For
it
sure.
really is perfect, and the AI voiceover just makes it sets it off. But not to mention, you got a super cute dog. So my daughter Piper definitely wants to meet this animal soon. So we got to make that happen, okay?
Yeah.
So if y'all go swimming or something, we gotta connect with the dog. Um, but I also respect the fact that this was a spec ad. The fact that you you were, and I think if I remember correctly, you had talked with this guy, and there was definitely potential for some paid work with him down the road, but
Yeah.
that he didn't quite have time maybe for like fully figuring this out. And your thought was, hey, I know a little bit of what he needs, what the need is. Let me see if I can just show him I can answer his need without having to tie up his time a lot.
That's it.
Um, and do this. I think you nailed it, at least from my perspective. What was his reaction to it?
Um, to, so this is the pre warning to to anybody that's watching this doing spec ads. You can't do spec ads with any kind of really expectation because
Mm.
otherwise, like you can get crushed. Now that being said, like no, he loved it. Let me make that clear. Like he showed love, he showed gratitude. He thought it was a great piece. But again, the guy's demeanor was just like, after he's seen it, he showed appreciation to it. And I remember he was like, "Hey, let's hop on a call." So I was all right, cool. And then like we just didn't get around to the call because the guy was busy. And then I followed up a handful of times. Obviously, I want to respect his time and not be super annoying. Um, but so it didn't transition into like us building a relationship moving further, which that was obviously the goal. But he showed love to it. He appreciated it. And the real bummer is they didn't even use it. And I
Oh
went out of my way and
no.
texted them and was like, "Hey, look, we don't have to do business, but like, feel free to use that video." And it was just nothing. It was like the contact kind
Mm.
of died. So that wasn't really a happy ending, but I didn't care because again, I had fun doing that. I just got the C70. Spec ads to me, you can't lose because that's a dope portfolio piece. When other people
Definitely.
are like looking at my work and deciding if they want to work with us or not, like they don't know all the ins and details of it. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to appreciate the creative. And I was happy to have that, on hand to be able to like showcase, like, hey, aside from a 2 to 3 minute brand story video, like we can also hit solve problems in the that's a 20-second story right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's also cinematic that could be leveraged on TikTok for paid ads or Instagram or Facebook. So um, I'm grateful that it happened. I'm grateful that the dude even had a combo with me to spike the thought to even do it, even though it didn't really pan out in the most ideal way that you would expect it to.
Yeah. Well, spec ad is we do spec ads not because we we hope that it leads to monetary opportunity, always at least. That's not the primary reason for it. Sometimes it's testing your own skills, growing your own skills, growing your portfolio, demonstrating the kind of work you can do. um, but for me it's always been like growing, just growing as a creator. So I love it, man. I think the video turned out great, and you do have a cute dog, a cute British dog, evidently, right? All right. I want to talk a little bit about success, and sort of maybe lessons that you've learned along the way. I mean, you've been an entrepreneur in various ways, and even currently, I would say you've experienced success with the Joy Collective in various ways. But I also want to, before we touch on that, I want to touch on Josh. Not that sounded bad. No, I want I want to talk about Josh. Gosh. Okay. Sorry, Josh. But Josh Jackson, man, so I knew Josh as a high school student, working at his high school here in Helena. And matter of fact, I remember the first time I met Josh, and I got to have Josh on here at some point. Um, but anyway, I met Josh. We were in this courtyard area right up at the high school here, and Josh was there with a camera. He was taking some pictures, and at the time, I was working with sort of their broadcast class, trying to help upgrade it. And I needed to teach somebody how to edit, because we had already sort of built out this really cool, I guess, pattern to their weekly news thing they were going to do, and I was trying to figure out like who's going to take over the editing. I couldn't keep doing the editing. The teacher wasn't quite ready to, so I was like, I got to teach somebody how to do this. I got to teach them fast, and I had already heard that I wouldn't be in that position very long. And I ran into Josh one day in this courtyard, and I saw him with the camera. And I was like, "So, do you shoot photos?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You have any video experience?" He was like, "Yeah." And I think he started showing me some of his stuff, and I was like, "Would you want to join up with this broadcast class?" And he was like, "Yeah, that sounds fun." he transformed it, man. He was the one that I had been looking for all along because he knew how to edit. I think his mom had bought him Premiere Pro when he was in middle school. And so here he was, just like, I think his mom was like, you're not doing sports, you're not in band. I want you doing something. And so he was like, I like video editing, or I'd like to learn video editing. Like, props to his mom for for being willing to just buy him Premiere Pro. Uh, but anyway, fast forward a couple of years, Josh had he had done a little bit with me on the side. I think I did a spec ad, and he helped with some behind the scenes on that. Um, and I think I tried to connect the two of you, and I think neither one of you were really keen on meeting the other, but evidently it's been a great opportunity. So talk a little bit about what that's been like with you and Josh.
Um, to be honest, that was like a game changing moment. And it's so funny. I noticed that like the pattern in my life is anytime I jump out of my comfort zone and like do the thing that maybe I'm hesitant on doing, it usually ends up becoming like the most valuable thing that I could have done. Um, you go back to my store, and there was how we ended up in Alabama was a hurricane came, so we evacuated out here. And in that time of being evacuated, I was forced to have faith in my employees to like run operation while we were out here. And that was like the mind blowing moment of realizing like, oh, this thing can go without me. Although that was like an uncomfortable, that wasn't something that I was like jumping to do. I don't know if I would have ever done it. And this kind of felt like one of those moments too, in the sense of, I remember like it was yesterday. I was about to start my first project with Alabama Farm Credit, and I knew we were going to be filming on the farm, and I knew there was a high chance I'm going to be filming the interview outdoor. And it just kind of dawned on me of like, I don't think I've done an outdoor interview yet, and if I do it, I want to execute at the best level possible. And I just started thinking about all the fearful variables that could happen, whether it be like audio related or lighting, trying to leverage the sunlight. Is there ways I could soften it? And there's just was so much going through my mind because I just wanted to be prepared. And so I remember I was hitting you up, just asking you some questions, and you were basically just like, "Look, here's your solution. Just meet Josh." And part of me was hesitant because I'm like, I'm really just getting this thing moving. Like, is it necessary? Like maybe I'm just in my head more than anything. And but again, I was like, all right, what went along with it, and it was one of those moments. We went and filmed that next day, and we just hit it off. It was very comfortable working with him, and it was almost like I was able to clone myself in a way that I never felt like would have been able to. His style, the way he likes to shoot, the he has his own like style and subjective ways of doing things, whether it's shooting super wide but also super close up on a 120 frame kind of shot vibe. Um, it I appreciated his style, his whole steez. That's always been my biggest fear with, because again, that was a big step for me because I had never delegated. I was the guy, show up with the camera and do everything. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? So
right.
I had never delegated that before. So and to kind of like test that water on a brand new client that was as important as that, was kind of scary. But his taste creatively, he showed me that day like, oh, he's got the juice for sure. And then on top of it, we had to get some drone shots, and I was like, do you know how to use a drone? Because I was going to get the drone shots. I had the drone, I'd been using it, but like, to be very fair, I was like still trying to build confidence with this drone. Every time that thing would go in the air, I'd get anxiety like I was on a plane. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was literally practicing with the drone the day before that, and like texting uh, Dustin, like asking him questions about it and stuff. So when it was finally time to do it, I was like, Josh, do you know how to use a drone? And he was like, oh yeah, for sure. He actually he used to have a job where all he did was real estate content
Yeah,
and the drone.
yeah.
So this dude grabs the drone, and the way he was just whipping this thing with so much confidence, it was just incredible. And we just vibe, we meshed really well. And then honestly, we hit it off from there. And then I just see so much potential in him. He reminds me a lot about me, but also has like a nice edge at such a young age that like that I can't relate to. Um, so it's just he's just one of those characters that like, and I'm sure you'd agree, like you just want to pour as much as you can into because you know like, hey, you're gonna be all right.
Yeah, no, he's super talented, man. Like I remember this video is I don't think it was this one specifically, but it was one of his lens videos he did. It's so incredible, man. It showed me then like this guy has an eye for things that most people, especially his age, just getting started in the video space, don't have an eye for. You know, and I would say in some ways he's a lot better at um, just sort of even seeing a certain shot than I could ever be. Especially this kind of stuff when I saw him doing these lens videos. I don't know where that other one is. I think he does like a 50 mil or, and it may not be on his Instagram, but anyway, Josh is super talented. And really just a great guy too. He's one of these guys that doesn't come across at all with any kind of arrogance. Always willing and ready to sort of like listen and learn, but at the same time, he has a lot to teach the people around him too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
he's
for sure.
talented enough and experienced enough at such a young age um, that he can teach some stuff. And I think I'm sure you have. I know I've learned stuff from him, but
Of
anyway,
course.
he's a cool guy and always excited to work with people. He has gotten a little bit pricier, more so over the years. Used to you could get Josh for just, hey man, you mind? I'll buy you lunch. Now he's like, all right, that'll cost you. So, but
Yeah,
good
man.
for him on
As
that.
deserved, dude.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I do want to give you a chance to just sort of share some insight. If you were to give just some key ways in which you've found success, or maybe just keys to success, so to speak. What would that be? What are some tips that you would give somebody just aspiring to find some level of success?
Yeah. Like video creative specifically, or just in general?
It's either way you want to go with it.
Yeah. Well, honestly, they're probably. I guess the answer would be pretty much the same, regardless. Um, hmm. I think for everybody it's different. I think everybody has different skill sets. But what I can say has like patterns I've recognized that have worked for me or have created any kind of opportunity or momentum or success. First and foremost, the more I play my story back, the more it's so blatantly obvious that like relationships number one. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're coming into anything with this like lackluster mindset of like, I don't want to, very competitive with other people in your space and just kind of feeling like you know everything, or maybe you know enough, or there's any kind of ego behind it. That'll be, you'll just be treading water in the same place for a long time. Um, it's been so obvious how pouring into other people somehow, some way came back around as like a value of opportunity, for myself. Um, I can't like express that one enough. So, if this is advice to someone who's like younger, um, I mean, it really doesn't even matter, but I just would say if you have the availability, you're not super wound down with a huge family, and you're like in a season of wanting to take risks, and you're looking for this any kind of keys of success. I think acknowledging the value of relationships and like, and while knowing that, going, okay, well, how do I establish that, if I'm just getting started. And for me, that's just like saying yes to everything. Um, Dude, I've done so much free stuff, like just cause, whether it was to like build a relationship with someone, or to get it for the portfolio, or um, I just always had this mindset of like, if the other option is me sitting around doing nothing that's not pushing the needle forward, then I'm just gonna say yes, and I'm gonna do that until I get to a point where saying yes actually is not more impactful than what I could be doing that would push the needle forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset can help drive and build relationships, um, and kind of keep you grounded to keep that front of mind. Um, so I would definitely say that, and highlighting that, prioritizing that, but then also, um, you know,
Can I
yeah,
interrupt you just a moment? Because the key with relationships that you're talking about, I mean, I see that with you doing investing in Creators University. I mean, that was something that not only did you are you like giving up your time for free, literally you're paying for this opportunity also. But I know just talking with you, it seems like so many relationships that you've been able to build through that program. I mean, these are people that are all over the world, even that you can call on. And I think even not long ago, you connected with a guy over in Georgia because you had a shoot over that way, and you just needed a second person to sort of help you out.
yeah,
So I mean, those kind of relationships have been beneficial. I mean, you talked about reaching out to Dustin and Aaron, uh, you know, uh, the guy Kevin with Cedar Creative. Like these are relationships that um, you know, it's one of those things you don't get into the relationship alone for the purpose of like gaining something from it. It's not like a oh I'm gonna make friends with this person just because it's going to benefit me down the road financially. But it's you genuinely step into friendships, you genuinely step into these relationships, and in the end it ends up being mutually beneficial. um,
yeah,
and oftentimes we learn from each other. I can say that about mine and your friendship. I mean, you and I, going back to that long car ride, but even a couple of weeks ago when we were at the pool, hanging out with the family, there's so many opportunities where it's just sitting back and talking, or texting or giving each other a call where there's opportunity to learn from each other. So yeah, I agree completely. Relationships are huge, and you've definitely invested in those and benefited from them also.
yeah, man, definitely. It's like at the end of the day, for me, I'm looking at a lot of these. The majority of these relationships is like, again, kind of going back to that same audacious kid of just like trying to like find a way. And for me, finding a way wasn't necessarily like I'm gonna make millions of dollars. It was more of just like, let me find something that I could do and be happy, and like I can kind of do it within my own without falling into the box of what society's trying to push me in. Um, and even dating back to that, my first, I always had the pattern of going like, no matter what it was, if I wanted to get into boxing, I would look at who's the best boxer in the world, and then like I'm like studying the patterns of what this person's doing. So I've always viewed things like that. So whether it's business, creative, just relationships in general, I'm always observing what other people are doing. So I'm kind of looking at all these people in their own unique ways of like superheroes in a sense, that I'm like, hey, I would be honored to have a relationship with you. So, and if there's any way that I could pour anything your way, I just know the way the world works is it may come back around. But if it doesn't, just like that spec ad, it's like, I didn't go into it with expectations. You know what I'm saying? And I know my intentions are pure going into it. So, in theory, you'll feel that as well. And this will end up being, a organic situation.
Yeah, yeah. I think this podcast has been a great example of that. I mean, so many people that I get to talk with that I learn from, and hopefully they benefit in the sense of being able to share their story a little bit. Um, but it definitely has been really neat to just sort of build those friendships, build those relationships, even if it is just through a video screen. Although quite a few people I've gotten to meet in person recently. Jared Brasher, he goes by Jay Brash on Instagram. He's like a 3D model space kind of video. I don't even. I'm butchering what he actually does, but basically he does like product design in like 3D space.
Gotcha.
And it's super cool stuff. But like I interviewed him one day on the podcast, and then the very next day, I was going up to Gardendale and went in this coffee shop that he had posted about, and I'd asked him about the day before. Well, he like lives right there next to it, and he was like, "Man, I'll be down in a minute," because I texted him saying I was at it. And then we met and talked for like half an hour at this coffee shop. So it's been really cool to build relationships, and then even more so whenever they can transfer to like real world. Speaking of real world, the Joy Collective has agreed to sponsor the first Creating Creators meetup, and I'm super appreciative of that. We're actually I think this will come out just before the meetup actually happens. At least I hope it does. But we'll be meeting at a brewery, local brewery. And let me ask you this: was there any specific reasoning other than you just being a really great friend of mine that you decided to support this meetup?
Uh, yeah, just being a big fan of the pod. Like I can separate you from the pod. That's how much it doesn't feel like a friend trying to do a podcast type vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Like I respect the pod for exactly what it is. And then obviously my relationship with you, I respect you for exactly who you are. Um, so when the opportunity arose, I was viewing it. I mean, yes, we're great friends, but it was less about even being friends and more of just like, you know, understanding what the pod is, my perspective on it, who that would attract. And it just made so much sense. I'm like, I'm a big fan of this pod. Why would I not support it? Why would I not create, again, going back to relationships, end up uh, participate in a moment to connect with all these people? So,
yeah. Well, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a really cool opportunity, hopefully, for the people that are able to make it. The feedback's already been pretty good, but I'm hoping to. Looks like we lost your webcam, though. Do you see that?
I'm changing batteries.
Okay, okay. Sorry, dude. I'm going a 2 hour video here, and I'm killing your battery.
I was prepared just in case. You know that
Okay, all right.
R6 don't have too much life to it.
I'm surprised it hasn't overheated already.
That is so good.
That's funny. But anyway, I'm really excited about the meetup. I think it's going to be a really cool opportunity. Not to mention, it's just like we've been saying, man. It's all about relationships, and I think this will be a neat way to solidify some of those relationships, as well as create an opportunity for other people to build new relationships as well in this space. So, all right, I did have to bring in a relatively young photo of you there. You seem like you were way too cool for somebody like me back then.
For
Uh,
sure. For sure.
you would have never been on a podcast back then, not this type of podcast. So, uh,
Only if I
but
was the main attraction.
exactly. All right, so I want to know what's next for you. What's next uh, for just your company in general? Uh, what are you aspiring to next?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think right now I'm really in a space of trying to like really pinpoint that. But what I do know, there's two things on my mind on like two kind of sides of the lever per se. And for the business, when I started this, I thought that I was searching for like a creative outlet, which that obviously is there and that is important and it does play a role. But through the chain effect of like bringing Josh on board and then like growing clients and just like kind of like boiling to scale, um, and simultaneously networking with so many people as you know we continue to talk about, I realized that I realized in this market that there's a lot of work out there. I think way more work than people realize. And I realized that because of that, there's a lot of, so to me in this space, like there's production company owners and then there's freelancers. And then it's like to each his own. Some guys are just like, hey, I just want to freelance me and my camera. This is really all I want to do. Call me if you got a gig, I'll show up. And then there's other guys that are trying to create the production companies, but like when they don't have all the work, they'll also pop up and be the freelancer, you know, and I do the same. And you know, for me, it was like, I'm going to do that until the day I can't. Um,
Right.
but I just realized that there was a common theme. And what's been on my heart lately is like, I feel like no, now I got the gnat chasing. I feel like the more that I build relationships with people in this industry and the more I kind of look around, the more I realize is like the tough. I think what people fail to realize when they come into the space is like, and I could be wrong. Maybe this changes in a little bit of time because, you know, disclaimer, I'm still figuring this out also. But I feel like we're not really in the video business per se. I feel like we're in the marketing business. And what I mean by that is like, I feel like there's a lot of people that come into the space, but they run into a challenge of like just keeping work consistent. So maybe they end up taking a job that maybe is creative related. Maybe they tap out and they just say, you know, it didn't work out, you know, or whatever. So I noticed that theme, and I notice, um, and I don't want to say this arrogantly, but like I noticed with my natural, and again, it wasn't overnight, as you know, you just heard. Like I've been doing cold outreach since I was 18, dropped out of high school, right? So I just noticed some of the skill sets that I'm able to leverage that come natural, like just having the audacity to reach out to thousands and thousands of local decision makers. Um, I noticed that doesn't come easy for everybody else, and maybe they don't even know where to start, and they don't, you know, they don't even realize what's out there. So I'm kind of in the space of leaning more towards of like, as much as I want to just delegate all of my admin work as we grow and just kind of like jump in the field and be creative, you know, with Josh and continue to scale the team. I'm kind of feeling like I want to solve that problem that a lot of these freelancers have and leverage my skill set and my natural talent of building these relationships and creating this pipeline to kind of just double down on scaling that so that that can in return create a lot of sustained opportunity for the creatives and then scale while I'm doing that, essentially delegate the creative to Josh and the rest of the team that continues to come on and scale thus forward, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
on the business side, that's kind of that's a thought that's been heavy on my mind, you know, of a direction to go.
Was was that in the origin of the company a thought, considering the name Collective?
So yes, no. Collective, the origin of Collective was just me knowing my natural tendency of things was like I knew when I started this, and if I go all in, like I'm gonna build it into a business. I know I'm gonna, and because it's gonna grow, I know I'm gonna scale it, and with scaling comes I need help. So I knew I was gonna build a team, and I knew I wanted to build a brand. But I didn't know that I was gonna like want to possibly focus my time on, you know, sales calls and and you know, relationship building. um I just didn't know how many people in this industry on the creative side were coming across this same problem of just keeping consistent work. So that was like a problem in the market that I feel like I kind of identified in the process of all of this, that kind of made me think and go, you know, maybe if I was a little less selfish and just went where I'm naturally good at, even though I rather be doing the fun creative, maybe I can then in return create opportunity for a lot of other creators and provide a stable, sustainable place for them to grow. Which would then in return they're going to end up they'll already be better than me or end up better than me, which will in return just make better product, which will help solve bigger problems for which will then attract better clients. um, so that's been kind of no, it wasn't in the origin. That's just been something that's been kind of revealing itself to me. And that's like on the business side. And that's happening because I'm in a place of like, okay, we're growing at a fast rate. Um, so now I'm kind of in limbo of like, okay, how am I going to maneuver? Because I can't stay doing the same thing that got me here, because we're kind of entering a scaling kind of phase.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked recently about another employee that you're or freelancer. I'm not sure what exact basis this person will work with you, but I know we talked about McKenna. I'm assuming you've talked more potentially, or y'all were going to get coffee or something. Has that
Yeah, it's ironic.
transpired?
Yeah, well, so it's ironic you say that. She literally DM'd me like 30 minutes ago, like in the middle of the pod.
Yeah.
Um, so I reached out to her, really leaning towards a W-2 employee, trying to find somebody. I know what I'm looking for is kind of crazy, but I know it exists. And I'm trying to find what I'd call like a creative assistant. So a hybrid of admin work, which is a lot of stuff that I need to delegate, so that I can focus on solving bigger problems. Um, but it would be just incredible if that same person that could take that kind of work also had a creative base. They don't have to be the greatest cinematographer in the world, with all kind of crazy experience, but if they just have, maybe they've seen a couple Peter McKinnon videos and they have a passion for it to a degree, they could show up on set and capture behind the scenes and kind of put together content for the, in-house content for the brand, for marketing. And so I'm really looking for a Swiss Army knife. And to be honest, who really led me in that direction again was Kevin from Cedar Creative. I
Yeah.
asked him all kind of questions about their come up. When did they hire? How did they choose who they hire? And that's something that stuck with me. He said they kind of focus on Swiss Army knives, people that can kind of do a lot across the board. And obviously that resonated with me because that's all I've ever been was the Swiss Army knife. We're the small boutique production company that's like providing a lot of value, um, but able to skip out a lot of the filler in between because we're so used to wearing so many hats. Which has been a unique value prop for us, ironically enough. Coming up filmmaking, not having experience on those big sets and not having the experience of having a director, an assistant director, a DP, an assistant, food catering, all that stuff. I used to feel inferior to people that did have that and make me feel as if like I wasn't like legit. But then it was weird because people would see my videos and they'd give me love. So it'd be like, I was like, and on one hand, I'm not the real deal, but on the other hand, people that are the real deal like the end product. Um, so that was always something, I've been trying to figure out. But ironically enough, fast forward today, that's actually that has created leverage for us that we don't necessarily have to have all of that. So anyway, to go back to McKenna, I'm looking for a W-2 employee that can play as a creative assistant, and we've gone back and forth about it. I've given her a little bit of context, not too much. She said she wanted some time to think about it, but she's definitely interested. And she just reached out. She's on family vacation right now. She just reached out about 30 minutes ago, and we're going to meet up for coffee. She's going to share some of her portfolio work and stuff. So who knows?
Yeah, that's cool, man. McKenna's great. I've shot weddings with her, and she's had a great opportunity at the University of Alabama doing. I don't know. It's not film. Like it's almost like a marketing major, but with like a film element to it. Something like that. It's really cool. I mean, just seeing like following her on Instagram, she's got some really cool opportunities. Recently, she was doing like sound design in this
I saw
room.
that. That was so
Uh,
dope.
that was really cool, man. I mean, that kind of stuff to do in college. I was like learning about World War II in college because I was a history major. I'm like I don't use that at all now. I don't know why I did all of that. So, but I'm still paying for it. So anyway, I think doing it some film school would have been really cool or something like that.
For sure.
But All right. So I always ask this question: who inspires you? I love this picture. I was telling Cole about this today, man. I was like, I love this picture because here you are looking like you're 12 with a little bit of facial hair, and you're in a room that looks like you're 5. So is was that your bedroom?
Bro, so let me paint the picture for you. That is me, probably 17. Again,
Okay.
have a GED, technically done with school, living with my girlfriend at the time, who was still finishing high school. We were like the same age, but I finished early. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I'm living in her guest room. That was a guest room in her family's house. So like that was my room, and like that's the iMac that I financed with the Best Buy card that her mom co-signed. That was my buddy's MacBook that was like in the room with me, that I just like put there to look like even more productive. And on the monitor is a website I was building for a local artist. And yeah, that was literally, that set the stage for everything we were talking about, and it's hilarious because
That's so
yeah,
funny, man.
I
It's
just I
such a
get
great
so much fun in it.
it's such a great picture, man. I thought I had to include that in here. So, all right, but who inspires you? And to be honest, I have a little bit of an idea, but I'm gonna see where you go with this first. So, but who inspires you, especially thinking about somebody that you work with or communicate with or that you're around, that just sort of like sharpens you, makes you feel, or makes you sort of push yourself to be better.
That's so tough, dude, because I I consume and digest so much insight and information from people, and have been for so long, whether it's like real life conversations, podcasts, like whatever, like that has been a constant theme for so long. Um, so the answer to that is so many people. I'm almost going to feel guilty. I'm going to leave so many people out. Um, so are we speaking like, 'cause that's kind of vague. Are we speaking
Right.
in like video, creative, business, life? It's like I pull from so many different places. I'll on one day be watching, like learning from like Alex Hermosi on just like core business principles, but then on the other day be like l- consuming like stoic information from Ryan Holiday, while on the other day I'm like downloading information from Gary Vee on marketing. But the next day might be like Peter McKinnon out on a creative vibe. Like I pull from so many places. Um, and then obviously there's like real life people as well. So I guess steer me in a direction to kind of help me filter that.
Okay. I like to use this. I like to use this as sort of a jumping off point for future episodes. So keep that in mind, that sometimes I like to use this
Make sure they're local.
person. Yeah, yeah. So, but I mean, but at the same time, I also like to know, like, it's not just a selfish question in the sense that give me somebody that I can talk to.
Yeah.
I think that originally was more of the intent for this question was, hey, I need another guest that you can connect me with, but also I like to know, like, where do you pull in inspiration from? Um, so I typically would say this is probably in like the video content creation, creative kind of field or industry.
Got it. That's tough
And
because
there's
now,
no wrong answer, man.
yeah. Who have I been pulling from in the video creative field? Well, I'll give like three versions of this. I'll give like on the come up. I'll give like kind of um, not real life related.
Yeah.
And then I'll give like right now, current local. Um, Coming up for me, it was like Colin Tilley obviously is one. Tree JTV, obviously, as I mentioned prior. There's a group of dudes out of Atlanta that are so dope. They've done like their portfolio is insane. To me, they remind me, they're what I would call the Cedar Creative of the music industry. And it's three dudes out of Atlanta. They go by Motion Family. And they've accomplished everything you could possibly accomplish. And these are people I met along the journey in real life and built relationships with, learned a lot from. Motion Family definitely played a heavy role, motivated me. They inspire me because I'd watch them do such incredible work with such incredible artists, but behind the scenes, it was like just them in the 5D, you know? So it was like, it made me feel like I could actually do it too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, they're so dope. Um, and then I guess kind of leaning more towards right now. Right now, I'm like, I'm all over the place, man. I'm like, I'm so wide open. I'm digesting stuff everywhere. I'm trying so hard to get better at all of it that like I'm taking everything from everywhere. Like I'm watching the 505 podcast pretty heavy.
That's great. That's a great podcast.
A
They
great
do some. They have some great guests on there.
one. Locally, all the guys that are on your podcast, literally. And I'm probably, and they're all killer. So, you know, don't nobody take this the wrong way, but like subjectively just intrigued by their style and just overall like ability to stand out. I'm a big Cedar creative nerd. So their work, they're the kind of guys where like I look at their work and I'm just like I could create something super dope and then like send it off and everybody's like, oh great, 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 and feel good about myself. And then I go watch a project they put out and be like, oh my, I'm so much to learn. Um, so
They are incredible storytellers. That spec ad they did with the car, man, with Sean
absolutely,
Patrick Kirby and John Champion, man, it really is like a piece of art. Have you recently come across? Well, I'll say this: just in light of the ball game, that the baseball game that was played yesterday at well, hello,
downtown.
yeah. What's the field called? Why can't I think of the field right now?
You're the local guy.
I am the local guy. Oh, come on now. I'm gonna kick myself for this. I'm tell everybody all the time I'm really bad, but anyway, I'll it'll be right here in just a second. It's Rickwood Field. All right, so this company, man, Champ Creative, and I say this because out of respect for Cedar Creative in incredible storytelling, Champ Creative did this video about the game. Dude, you got to listen to the audio. The voiceover to it is so incredible. But I would put it on a similar level,
Yeah.
just with incredible storytelling, which so many of the creatives in this area are super talented. I mean, we talked about Harrison Tarabella earlier. He's a really great storyteller and sort of a
Harrison, Dustin, Aaron,
yes, yes.
like I could kudo Aaron all day. I'm like such a big fan of him. I feel like I don't know, he just stands out to me. So like between like his understanding of the business, but then like also he's got this hybrid creative edge, but he's also like this big systems whore and like loves the gear and hardware side of things, and like he just has a lot of insight and perspective. That's why it's tough, dude. It's tough. I want to mention all these dudes, but
Yeah. Well, you need
they're
to check out this video. Champ
yeah, that
Creative
looks
did it.
crazy.
Dude, it's really great. The voiceover sells it. I mean, even the name of the video. Let's see if they have it in here. They don't have it in here. Rickwood Field has it. Oh, Rickwood Field must be heaven, dude. Just listen to the voiceover, watch the video, wipe away the tear, and then text me like how right I was. Okay,
Yeah.
because it's really Cole and I watched this together, and Cole literally shed a tear watching this. So it's a great video. But back to the question, I agree with you. I do have to, I think we've already mentioned him on the podcast, but I feel like you would definitely agree that Josh Jackson has sort of pushed you, man, and sort of made you a better creative, and just like he makes you want to do your part better.
100%, bro. Let me tell you, every edit that I get done, first off, he's so ready to like take on the edits. You know, I'm like, look, it's coming, it's coming. But in the meantime, like any project that I finish, he's literally like timestamp, like this here, that here, hey, and just like, and in the beginning you could tell he was like kind of hesitant of like, hey, not in a bad way, but like just some thoughts that may
Yeah.
add value. But I cut it. There's one thing I could do is I can communicate. I made it very clear in the beginning, like, bro, this is the goal. So anything that pushes that, I'm wide open. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. Like, don't hold back. And ever since, every project that I edit, he comes back with something. And at times, my natural instinct is like, what but I know better, and I'll literally go through each thing he says and I'll make the adjustment, and then after be like, oh, okay. And I've done that so many times now that the most recent project that you referred to with
Yeah.
next step situation for the special needs kids, I'm at a point now where I'm like editing with Josh in mind. I'm like, I'll be spacing B-roll and I'm like, oh, no, he said that's not 3 clips. That's only 2. So that's going to create like this weird transition. So let me not do that. So 100%, he pushes me whether he realizes it or not to make a better overall product for sure. Definitely inspires.
Yeah, I've got to have him on, man. If nothing else, just he'd be fun to chat with about our origins and how we connected. But then also, man, he's in the short amount of time he's been out of high school, he's worked with quite a few different variety of people as well as types of videos that he shot. So I think he would be great. That's definitely one that I'll have to reach out to.
For sure. You should do that. That's what stands out to me about him the most is like his focus of like he's like career driven,
Yeah,
and it's like at such a young age that's he's like actually career driven. It's not like this like, oh, I'm doing this process that the world told me to do. Like, you just can see the hunger for it. And he, you know, you could tell he's probably not allowing as many distractions in his life that a lot of people maybe his age are, out of the focus of the goal of whatever it is he's seeking, and you could also tell he's in the process of figuring out what that is he's seeking.
yeah,
He's figuring this out in real time. You could tell, I could tell there's a part of him that probably feels like, because no matter how dope he is, like you can't change his age. So like you could tell maybe sometimes in the beginning that would get in his head to like want to take, um, uh, maybe want to take credibility away. When in reality, like I feel like I'm constantly reminding him, like, nah, dude, like if you have a great idea and great execution, like that's all that matters. So I
yeah.
feel like he's coming one into that and starting to really turn up.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's probably he is going to do some incredible stuff, like on his own eventually. You know what I mean? If he wants to, whether that's under an umbrella of something like, um, uh, I guess a company in general that maybe he works for, or whether he's on his own with his own brand one day. He's super talented. So I'm thankful for his friendship, and I'm thankful that the two of y'all were able to connect, because I think both of y'all have mutually benefited from the relationship and the working together. So that's cool.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, man, I appreciate you putting up for what is this, 2 hours and 20 minutes that we've been talking, man. I knew this might go a little bit long. First of all, I wanted to hear your story, because I do think you've got a unique story. And also, I know just anytime I get on here with somebody that I've got a little bit more of a long-standing friendship with, it usually ends up dragging out a little bit longer. So I know you've probably got tons to edit, or at least tons of family time that you need to spend, man. But seriously, I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your support of this podcast. I appreciate your financial support of the meetup. Between you and Air 7 Media, it's actually going to happen. So I'm excited about that. But seriously, thank you for taking the time today to be on this podcast.
Yeah, man, of course, no problem. I appreciate you even sharing the platform. I want to say too, I want to throw one like recommendation from like a fan perspective with the
Yeah.
podcast. And you kind of touched on it anyway, so it sounds like you're heading in that direction. I 100% think that you should consider like how you reference like bringing Aaron back on. I think circling back and just because there's so many that I watch that like it's so good, but there's still so much more. Like there's other sides of things. Like with Cedar, I wanted to know so much about their business side, but we were
Yeah.
so heavy on story that it was like there just wasn't enough time for it all, you know. So
Right.
I think like as you build, because you're naturally, I'm going to assume, going to build real relationships with all these people, and just as they kind of nurture and develop, I think bringing them back and back, and I don't feel like that will ever get old.
Yeah. Well, I've
And
had
then
to
they'll
tell
kind of become
myself,
characters.
say that again.
I said, and then they would kind of become characters to the story of the overall pod.
Yeah. I, I always have to tell myself that one single interview or episode is not enough to encapsulate an entire person or company or creative in general. And so I always have to limit myself a little bit. Like I can't try to go into every single bit of their story. I've got to leave room for maybe wanting more. Is sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I agree, man. There's every single person I talk to. There's usually, especially after the interview, I always think, man, I should have dug deeper on that. There's so many of the things that people say. There was one moment with talking with Sean Patrick Kirby when he talked about not being like a videographer, but being a director of photography or cinematographer.
I love that. That was such a dope moment to
Yeah,
me. Even though I know it's probably pressure on you,
it was.
I,
It definitely felt like.
I felt that, you know.
But I wish I would have gone a little bit deeper with that and just asked him to expound upon it, you know. And instead, I think I took it a different way. But anyway, I always have those moments in a podcast or an episode where I'm like, I wish I would have dug deeper on that. But at the same time, you know, I try to keep them to an hour and a half. This case, I'm blowing that out of the water. But you know, it's there's only so much you can dig into.
Yep.
But I agree. Circling back around is a great idea. And somebody like Aaron Wilhite and even Cedar Creative, as early as I talked with them, it would be great to bring them back in.
Sure.
Cedar was fun, man, with the three of them at the same time.
I love that. I love
that. And I don't. One of probably my best moments in it was their Instagram thing, man. Going back and looking at each one of their first Instagram posts. It was a great moment. So it was cool.
I remember that. Then one of them had like a cat or something.
Yeah, I think it was a dog. Yeah, like a really playful dog, and the other one had a really dramatic, sort of sad-looking
emo vibe.
Exactly. So, all right, man. Well, like I said, I do want to respect your time, and I've probably already ignored that too much. But seriously, thank you so much for jumping on here with me today, man.
Yeah, man. Of course, anytime.